Test one, test 1, 2, test 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. August 13th, 2018, press conference. Testing 1, 2, testing 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Testing. August 13th, 2018, press conference. We good? Cool.
Once more, Joe.
Once more? Is that Dory? Who's that? Perfect. Oh, testing. Good?
Yeah, thank you.
Good. Do a little mic check here for you. Testing 1, 2. While everybody comes in, testing 1, 2. Yes. Everybody's audio good? Anybody not ready? Come on in, folks. Good afternoon. My name is Brian Wheeler. I'm the Director of Communications for the City of Charlottesville. Speaking in this order today will be Mike Murphy, the City Manager for the City of Charlottesville, Police Chief Rochelle Brackney, City of Charlottesville, Colonel Gary Settle, Virginia State Police Superintendent, Gloria Graham, University of Virginia's Associate Vice President of Safety and Security, Allison Ferroli, our Regional Emergency Management Coordinator, Brian Moran, Virginia Secretary of Public Safety and Homeland Security, and Chief Andrew Baxter with the Charlottesville Fire Department. I'm going to turn it over to Mike Murphy, and then after everyone's remarks, we're going to make sure you know the many other organizations involved. Some of them and some of those people are behind me today, and they include UVA's Police Chief Tommy Sutton, Albemarle County Commonwealth Attorney Robert Tracy, Albemarle County's Fire Chief Dan Eggleston, Albemarle County County Executive Jeff Richardson, and from the Virginia National Guard, the Director of Joint Staff, Brigadier General James Ring. So many of these other partners have been very helpful. We're going to go through a list of other folks who've been supporting this effort. Mr. Murphy.
Thanks, Brian. Well, good afternoon. I want to start by expressing on behalf of the City of Charlottesville my gratitude. Helped us navigate the challenges of this anniversary weekend. In particular, I want to acknowledge the men and women of the Virginia State Police who brought so many resources to the table at every level and interacted with our citizens. I said last Wednesday that we learned a lot during the last year, and we continued to learn throughout the event. I firmly believe that the relationships we built over the last 6 months made a huge difference in achieving successful outcomes this weekend. I'm proud of the efforts of the City of Charlottesville Public Safety personnel and police and fire, but so many other departments contributed to our efforts in the greatest demonstration of teamwork in my career. I want you to know a bit about the people from my team that are on this stage or in front of you today. Fire Chief Andrew Baxter is the driver and catalyst behind a systemic change for our city in emergency planning and deserves credit for his commitment to ensuring that this and every event utilize best practices. Thank you, Chief. Police Chief Rochelle Brackney made the decision to come to our community only 8 weeks ago. It takes courage and leadership to knowingly face a challenge of this magnitude, and the organization and our community owe her a debt of gratitude. Thank you, Chief. Director of Communications Brian Wheeler has worked diligently for months to see that we engaged the community and shared critical information. He headed a team of professionals that realized our communication goals. Thank you, Brian. I believe that the city of Charlottesville is a great place for many, but not all of our citizens, and we need to acknowledge that truth. This weekend has demonstrated our resilience. The city of Charlottesville, as an organization, will not forget August of 2017 or 2018, and we must continue to challenge ourselves as individuals and an organization. The team effort of our staff with our state, regional, and local partners provides an opportunity for us to take a step forward, meaningful progress on the issues of equity and affordable housing that may one day allow us to realize our vision statement to be one community filled with opportunity. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Approximately 2 weeks ago, or excuse me, it feels like 2 months ago, I arrived in Charlottesville. And when I arrived here, I met citizens and residents and the greater Charlottesville community who were filled with fear, uncertainty. There was a lot of distrust and mistrust in the community regarding what our footprint would look like and how might we engage as law enforcement professionals, not only with those persons who live here, but with those persons who might come here. The question was asked over and over again, how could we trust you? How do we have a reset based on what we encountered last year? What were those gaps? What were those failings? Not only we asked them over and over to just go on blind faith, to believe in the plan and the process this year, that we were committed to narrowing those gaps that had been identified last year. And if I can say today that those gaps were narrowed, I can say that wholeheartedly, I can say that with confidence, I can say that with truth. I believe that the weekend has allowed us a platform no longer to just consider the narrative of last year and the way that it was, but a platform that allows us to move forward in a real and meaningful way. We can't dismiss what occurred last year, but what we can do and what we can say is, from this point moving forward, we have the opportunity to now control the narrative, to control the reputation, and control what Charlottesville looks like to the nation and to international partners. I thank this community for stepping up and confronting the hatred that was here last year and confronting those who might have wanted to come here this year. I thank each and every one of our partners who volunteered to come here, not under duress, but under excitement and saying, we need to help, we need to come forward, and we need to do our part. So every one of our partners that are up here, I applaud you, and I appreciate them. But more importantly, I appreciate the community for allowing us and giving us the opportunity to reset. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Chief Brackney. Last Wednesday, we all shared a unified vision of our expectations with regards to this past weekend's events. We discussed a comprehensive and a unified plan last Wednesday. We discussed a tremendous amount of resources that would be coming to Charlottesville and dedicated to the event. We also discussed public safety expectations of the Charlottesville community. Today, I can tell you that we met our expectations. First and foremost, the level of cooperation demonstrated by all of the individuals up here and their agencies was unprecedented, unlike I have ever seen before in my 30 years. Second, I'm happy to report that the incident action plan that we put together as a group was executed almost flawlessly, and it allowed success. It is clear that the lessons learned from last year's event was implemented into this year's incident action plan and again executed. Every person associated with this event understood their role and their responsibility. And the ability of our unified command to work very fluidly and adjust on the fly was critical to the success of bringing this to a solution or a resolution at the end that left with no violence and insightful acts, which was what we were hoping for. And despite the hope that the entire event would have been peaceful, there were some arrests that were made. A tremendous amount of discretion was used throughout the weekend by officers and troopers out where the rubber hits the road, if you will. There were arrests made, 7 arrests that I'm aware of to date, that consisted of assault and battery, disorderly conduct, and a possession of a concealed weapon. More importantly, or equally as important, I think it's so important that we mention the tremendous outpouring of hospitality by the citizens of Charlottesville, expressed to us by all throughout the community. We received notes, signs, emails, postings, and that's what I want to remember about Charlottesville. It's an extraordinary city, and I could feel that from the postings and again the personal contacts that our troopers they had throughout the event. It's clear that the majority of the community understood why we were here and the difficult job that we had. Those acts of kindness will always be appreciated by the Virginia State Police. Once again, I would also like to thank our federal, state, and local partners for their cooperation during this assignment. And I also would like to thank the men and women, again, were boots on the ground that made this event turn out like it did. I appreciate their help, their professionalism, their discipline, and their patience throughout this entire event was admirable. I thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Gloria Graham, Associate Vice President for Safety and Security at the University of Virginia. I too made the decision to come to this community as Chief Brackney did, me about 3 months ago, so I have a little bit of tenure on her as a resident of Charlottesville. But I chose this community, and I was well aware of the trials of last year when I made the decision to come here. And I chose it because this is the work that I love to do. I love to come into a community and be part of that community and help make that community a better place, and that's not something that happens in a weekend. I've spent my entire career in public safety and had a variety of challenges, and this one and this community and its people enticed me to come here. The University of Virginia expresses our sincere thanks for all of the regional partners that did so much work for so many hours, not just this weekend, but for months leading up to this time. There were first responders, there were law enforcement, there were other public safety and medical professionals that put in significant hours over the weekends with one common goal in mind, and that was to keep the city of Charlottesville safe. We on our campus experienced an event on Saturday. We had worked closely with the organizers of that event. We supported them wholeheartedly in their event. I worked directly with that group, and we appreciate those who attended that event on Saturday. It was a peaceful protest, and we support peaceful protest. We support people's rights to express their freedoms of expression and to express their First Amendment rights as a whole. And you expect us as public safety officials to plan and to do things that minimize the opportunity for risk and for criminal incidents to occur in your community. Sometimes that causes you to have to go out on a limb and trust us. And sometimes that trust is really hard to buy into because you don't know exactly what it is you're trusting us with. I can tell you 100% that this team, every conversation, every plan, every step, everything that we did was wholeheartedly dedicated to the safety of this community and minimizing any opportunity for people to come in and to disrupt what we know as a place that we love. Last week when I spoke to you, you remember perhaps that I mentioned that we didn't expect to get instant grace. And that is absolutely not what we expected to get. What we know is that this weekend is over and that it is now time to get to the real work of continuing to build community trust and to making this a place where all of us feel exceptionally well in living and learning and working here. So thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. I'm Allison Furley, the Emergency Management Coordinator for the City of Charlottesville, UVA, and Albemarle County. And as the Emergency Management Coordinator for the region, it is my job during incidents like this to be what's called the Emergency Operations Center Manager. I will tell you that this past weekend we held 6 operational periods through 3 days and 3 nights of staff of about 50 plus partners that came from the local region here and also state partners. With the declaration of a local and a state emergency last week, that activates what we call our Regional Emergency Operations Plan. That plan was utilized to help operate our Emergency Operations Center, and it was a success. I will say that through all the planning coordination that we've done over the last few months as a region and with our state partners, we definitely showed what successful coordination and collaboration looks like, and that is what we are looking at today. As the Emergency Management Coordinator for the City of Charlottesville, UVA, and Albemarle County, I can't thank everybody up here and everyone else I've worked with over the last 6 months to make sure that we have a successful weekend like we did. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. Brian Moran, Secretary of Public Safety and Homeland Security. I could not be prouder to stand along with these men and women, extreme professionals, these wonderful men and women, and the agencies they represent. I'm proud to do that. Let me say first, on behalf of Governor Northam, thank you. Throughout the weekend, I was communicating with Governor Northam, and this morning had a chance to actually personally meet with him along with Colonel Settle and brief him on the events of the weekend. And he was effusive in his praise of all of you who were involved in this weekend's events. You know, he knows a little bit about operations and what goes into planning. He served 8 years in the United States Army, so he knows how difficult it is to plan and then execute that plan. And so he was very appreciative. You know, after having witnessed the events of last year, we wanted to do everything we could to prevent those events from ever occurring again in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And one of the strongest recommendations that we could make was the adoption of a unified command. We want to make sure that the assets, the state assets that were dedicated to the city, were properly integrated into the preparations, the planning, and the response. Hundreds of state police were here this weekend, hundreds of National Guard soldiers, emergency managers, and many others. Department of Corrections, Transportation, I mean, the list goes on. And they were properly integrated into these plans because we adopted what's called a unified command system. It's a little inside baseball, but you know, this is a proper operation. So I'm thrilled to have been able to observe it work this weekend. You know, under the leadership of our unified command, Captain Worsham, Chief Brackney, Chief Baxter, and others, we were able to not only plan, prepare, but execute. And by all measure, we were successful in doing that. So finally, let me just say thank you to all of the professionals, especially those who were out in the streets of Charlottesville, in the parks, throughout the grounds of UVA. As you all know, it was a hot, humid weekend. And throughout this weekend, they conducted themselves in a professional manner. And many times, they had to demonstrate restraint, in which they did each and every time. So we couldn't be prouder. Second, let me say thanks to the citizens of Charlottesville. I know their patience has been tried, But I thank them for their patience, their understanding. You know, they've had a number of inconveniences, but they are resilient, and we look forward to returning to Charlottesville many occasions. Lastly, I want to thank many of the protesters. They came, they protested, they articulated their grievances in a manner that was peaceful and observed other persons' safety concerns. You know, the First Amendment is tough. In public safety, you must balance our Bill of Rights, our First Amendment and other rights with that of public safety. And it's not always easy, but I think what we observed this weekend, we accomplished that. And it's something to be proud of. It's something that the governor is proud of, his entire administration, and all Virginia citizens should be proud of what these professionals were able to perform this weekend. So with that, I thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Andrew Baxter. I'm the fire chief for the city of Charlottesville. I said at the press conference last week and at every single community engagement session that we held in the lead up to this weekend that our job as public safety professionals is to prepare for worst case scenarios. And we were driven by that philosophy in our planning starting last winter. And I believe deeply that our commitment to that understanding and the planning process that flowed from that is the basis for our success as a unified team this past weekend. I also said that I would be glad to be accused on Monday morning today of having been too prepared. And I think we've achieved that as well. One of the highlights of the weekend in terms of evidence that our planning process was effective was our ability to support events throughout the region, while at the same time maintaining our coverage to all of our communities, just like we would on any other day. But make no mistake, that took a Herculean effort on the part of everybody up here and all of their agencies, and a significant number of mutual aid resources. Well over 1,000 folks were here to help us out, and we could not have done that without them. Some data on the fire and EMS responses in the event-related area, our area of operations over the weekend. We had 10 incident responses within the AO this weekend, 9 patient contacts. One of those calls was unfounded. We treated 3 law enforcement officers for heat-related injuries, none of whom required transport to the hospital. Of the other 6 civilian patient contacts, 2 were transported to the hospital, both to the University of Virginia in stable condition. So as a comparative to last year, I think it's very obvious if you want to use that metric to measure our success. And the last thing I would say is that our goal has been to provide for the safety of our community so that we can, as a community, as Chief Brackney alluded to, move forward with these difficult, challenging conversations about long-term issues. And I think we've achieved that as a public safety community. And as we talk about in public safety, safety is a shared responsibility between those of us standing up here and our communities. And these conversations that we're going to have moving forward, those also need to be shared. So thank you for your time and for coming today. Appreciate it.
I fear I may have left out Chief Ron Lance, so I want to make sure that Albemarle County Police Department is recognized. So in addition to all the groups up here and the governor's office, we do want to thank a number of other agencies that have been heavily involved. And Secretary Moran and Chief Baxter have referred to them, but let me give you a few names. The Virginia Department of Emergency Management, the Virginia National Guard, the Virginia Department of Health, the Virginia Department of Corrections, the Virginia Department of Transportation, the Virginia Department of Game and Inland Fisheries, the Virginia Department of Fire Programs. Locally, our Piedmont Family YMCA, the Martha Jefferson Hospital, the University of Virginia Health System,